Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. If you will, like, share, comment on the post, and then we will be in the 18th chapter of the book of Acts, beginning in verse 26. And we'll continue to look at the story of Apollos and his ministry and the work that he does. And a great verse challenge for us today in the ministry, the work of Apollos. Verse 26 says, He began to speak boldly in the synagogue, but when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they took him aside and explained to him the way of God more accurately. We have two very influential examples to us here in this story. Again, we have read previously about Apollos. He was an eloquent man, it says competent in the scriptures, and had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and spoke concerning, even though he only knew of the baptism of John. So what that means is he knew, he had heard and believed that the Messiah was coming, that God would send the Messiah. What he apparently had not heard was some, at least, measure of the story of Christ. Certainly not the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. Maybe he had heard of Jesus, but had not connected the dots. But he was, so he was preaching basically like John the Baptist did: prepare the way. The Messiah is coming, because again, that's all the knowledge that he has, and based on that knowledge, in verse 26, it says he began to speak boldly in the synagogue. And so he goes to the synagogue where the Jews would be gathered, and begins to preach, like John, that the Messiah is coming. You better, be prepared, get ready, that Christ is, the Messiah is coming, and so you should prepare, make way, the way of the Lord. And so he was preaching and teaching that particular message in the synagogue to the Jews. And so first lesson is that we see Apollos preaching what he knew. A lot of people think, well, I can't tell anybody about the Bible. I can't tell anybody about Christ because I don't know very much of it. I don't know a lot of the things. Well, let me encourage you. I think the example we have here is a good one. Apollos didn't know it all, but he spoke what he knew. And let me encourage you to go and to tell what you know. And the greatest thing you know that you can tell is what Christ has done for you. And I've shared this with you before. The greatest story you can tell has three parts to it, and you know them well. The first part is what my life was like before I met Christ. And then the second part, I'm going to give to you. You don't have to make it up. Then I met Christ. And then the third part is, and this is what my life's been since I met Christ. And that's the greatest story you can tell. And that's really what Apollos was doing. He was just simply telling the story that he knew. Now, the second part of this verse says that Priscilla and Aquila heard him, took him aside, and explained to him the way of God more accurately. There's two sides then to this second half of this verse. We have two people who are willing to disciple, to train, to teach, to share with Apollos then what he doesn't know. That they take him aside. They don't do it in front of people and embarrass him, but they take him aside and they share the complete gospel. They tell him, you're exactly right. The Messiah is coming. In fact, he has already came. He has suffered and died and been resurrected. And so they give him the way of God, as it's called here. They give him, as Paul Harvey used to call it, the rest of the story. And so give them a medal for teaching, discipling, give Apollos a message because he doesn't get discouraged. He obviously doesn't fight back, because we read the next verse. He wishes to cross to Achaia. The brothers encouraged him and wrote the disciples to welcome him. So he goes home and he continues to preach the gospel and proclaim. Now he goes and he's able to tell them the Messiah is not just coming, the Messiah has came in the form of Jesus Christ. And so there are just some great models for us in this little verse to share the gospel the best you can, as much as you know, share it. Be willing to help someone who knows less, and be willing to take help teaching from someone who knows more. And I think, honestly, I think if we would be willing to do those three things, we could see a real transformation in our churches and our nation. Again, if we would speak boldly what we do know, if we would be willing to help others grow in their faith, and if we would be willing to let others help us. Think about it. Which one of those three areas, and maybe all three of them, do we need to work on? Do you need to work on in your life? Something for us to consider. You have a good day, and we'll see you here tomorrow morning.